Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So for today, I wanted to take an early look as to what's happening on the PvE as of right now, because the next patch is just to the PvE servers, a lot of new changes and a lot of stuff to go over. Keep in mind, this patch is going to be a little bit of an awkward one because it will last a lot longer, aka there's going to be kind of a hotfix mini patch around the middle of this month, and then there'll be a real patch at the end of this month, early next month. But either way, if you guys end up enjoying this video and enjoy these early look into the patches, then let me know by hitting that like button. But let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So starting things off is actually going to be a new skin that I want to talk about. It's going to be God Staff Jax. Now this skin looks awesome. I mean, you guys probably know about the Lee Sin, Godfist Lee Sin skin that looks wonderful already. Well, apparently it's going to be a new skin theme or skin line or whatever you want to call it that'll be slowly released, with the second one of course being for Jax. I don't think this skin is worth our value, I guess, as much as the Lee Sin one for Godfist Lee Sin, because the Lee Sin one has a lot of kind of custom emotes and actions and things he says and all that stuff. While this one for Jax just kind of seems to be slapped onto the base model, so it doesn't really have custom emotes or anything like that as far as I'm aware, but regardless, it does look pretty cool still. So look forward to this skin coming out in the next couple of weeks. Following that, let's quickly talk about some of the changes happening to champions. The first of which is going to be once again Aatrox. I mean, what do you know? He's getting some more buffs. Apparently the rework and the 3 buffs in 3 different patches after that weren't enough to bring Aatrox to where he is. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said before, we're just waiting for the Aatrox rework to happen, and I feel like Riot should slowly start to work on that, with of course Swain coming up next. But the buffs to Aatrox regardless are as follows. The base AD has been increased by 2. His AD growth has also been increased by 0.5, and the damage on his E ability has also been increased by only 5. Let's be honest here, we already know that these buffs, even though they are buffs obviously, aren't really going to do anything. I mean, Aatrox is still going to be pretty much in the exact same position he is as of right now. This isn't going to change him too much, this isn't going to make him OP or even strong for that matter. He's still going to be pretty subpar until the changes, the big ones, the rework, finally comes. Following this, however, we have some buffs coming over to Cassiopeia. Now, this is one of those champions very similar to maybe someone like Azir, to where if she's strong, she is insanely strong, to the point where she's easily top 3 and there's almost no reason not to pick her if you're legitimately trying to win, unless you're just a hardcore one-trick or something. Cassiopeia is getting the buffs to her Q, where the mana cost has been lowered by 10, which is actually quite a decent amount, and the AP ratio on her E ability has been increased by 10%. As of right now, personally, I don't really see this champion too often, but with these buffs, I actually wouldn't be too surprised if we start seeing Cassiopeia on the Rift much more frequently, and a lot of people, especially in higher elo, picking her up because, again, she is an insanely strong hybrid carry, probably one of the best in mid lane next to someone like maybe Azir. So don't be too surprised if the next patch, assuming these buffs finally do go through for Cassiopeia, you start seeing her much more frequently in the mid lane, and if you're a mid lane player, picking her up may not be a bad call. Moving on to the next champion, I want to talk about Graves. Now keep in mind, I'm not talking about every single little change happening to every single champion, I'm just talking about the ones that are somewhat relevant, if not pretty big. And this one is pretty big. So at the very moment, Graves is sitting at a measly 47% win rate in the jungle, which is honestly obviously not that high. But these buffs to Graves may definitely change that, because I feel like Graves may become OP once again, assuming these buffs do make it to the live servers. Let's go into them. First of all, we have his Q, where the cooldown on this ability has been lowered by 1 second, and the cost on this ability has also been lowered, especially as you rank it up to minus 20 mana by rank 5. Since his Q ability is of course the first ability that you max out, well, this is actually not that bad. I mean, 20 mana less is not bad at all. But then he also has a buff to his W that states the cooldown on this has also been decreased, this time by 2 seconds at all ranks. The slow has been increased to 70% at every single rank, making this a wonderful 1-point wonder, rather than starting at 15 and only maxing out at 35%. But to kind of balance that out just from being completely absurdly overpowered, the slow duration has been lowered from 1.5 seconds to just a half a second. Personally, I think this trade-off is actually completely worth it. I mean, at 70%, you can almost even start considering that to be a root, because no one is going to be escaping that from that half a second that it CCs them for at all. I mean, unless they have some kind of dash, they're going to be chilling in that smoke screen for a long time. And the great thing about this is the fact that since they're so insanely slowed, this sets up the perfect combo with your Q ultimate and even for your allies to work off of it. And I think this is going to make Graves really, really, really good. So this is going to definitely be a champion to watch out for the next patch. Personally, I'm a little bit scared because I do know Graves is pretty damn strong in the jungle if he's actually in the meta. A lot of Graves players tend to either just go full AD lethality and just completely destroy your Anus even though they're still relatively tanky, or they go this really annoying kind of Death's Dance Phantom Dancer build where they're still doing a lot of damage, they're still a ranged champion, they still have mobility, but they're also insanely hard to kill, almost as hard as a tank. Following this, we have a nerf coming over to Jace, a very strong champion in the current meta that just seems to be very good all around and doesn't have too many weaknesses. The nerf is going to be to his E ability in melee form, of course, which has been increased in cooldown at the earlier ranks, but essentially bring the exact same by the time you max it out. The reason for this is quite simple. At the very moment, his E ability is the last ability that you actually max. You go Q and then you go W because your extra attack speed on the W is so damn good. But it seems like now, if you actually do leave his E ability at rank 1 for the majority of the game until you max it out last, the cooldown on his E ability being at rank 1 extra 3 seconds is gonna actually affect you a little bit more and be kind of obnoxious to deal with. So this may put Jace in a situation where now maybe Jaces will start maxing their E ability second instead of their W, but only time will tell. Next up, we have a quick nerf happening to Katarina where the damage on her Shunpo, the E ability, has been lowered by 15 at every single rank, which is actually quite a lot. A lot of Katarinas like to go for the early damage with the E ability to Shunpo, auto attack, reset, and then just get the dagger and then Shunpo again and do quite a bit of damage. So for Katarina, a normal all-in in the laning phase will be usually using 2 Shunpos on the target, which will be a total of about 30 damage reduction, assuming you're going in for that all-in, of course. Considering she's really strong at the moment for an assassin champion, this is kind of a slap on the wrist. I don't feel like this will bring her down too much. She'll still be pretty damn strong, but this should definitely bring her down a little bit in terms of just how absurdly strong she is at the very moment. Following that, we also have a buff coming over to Kayn, more specifically, Red Kayn. First of all, we have his AD growth being increased, which I'm assuming applies to all of Kayn, but then we also have a buff to his passive within the Dargan Kayn, aka Red Kayn, to where now he'll actually get an increase in spell vamp at the earlier levels of the game, but it'll still even out to being 43% at the very end. A pretty good buff to Kayn. I don't really see him too often at the moment, and when I do, it's not too bad, but it's not too amazing either, so I feel like this is a decent buff that's not going to completely overtune him, but hopefully put him in a decent spot. Next up, we also have a buff coming over to Kled, easily one of the most obnoxious champions in League of Legends to face just because of how his passive works and how he just keeps remounting and all that stuff. Regardless, the buff is as follows. His base AD has been increased by 2, his AD growth has been increased by 0.5, which obviously isn't that much, but it's not bad at all. And his Jousting, the E ability, the damage on this has actually been increased by 10 at every single rank. Obviously not the biggest buff in the entire world, but I'm glad it isn't, because if this guy got a huge buff and if he became completely meta and just kind of a top 3 top laner, I'm gonna be really disappointed with League of Legends and just hate every game I have to face Kled, because this guy, I just don't really understand how he works, the passive and everything, it's just so annoying to face. Following this, let's talk about Teemo. Teemo is finally getting a nerf and a much deserved one because, funny enough, he's actually the highest win rate top laner at the very moment, sitting at around a 54% win rate, which for Teemo is pretty damn high. So the nerf is as follows. The HP growth has actually been lowered by 4, just to make him a little bit more vulnerable and squishy, which he honestly should be, and Toxic Shot, his E ability, the damage on this has been lowered, the per second damage, by 1 at rank 1 and 5 by rank 5. Now this is a decent hit because the main thing that makes Teemo annoying is of course his Toxic Shot combined with Summon Aerie just constantly reapplying, dealing all this annoying consistent damage over and over and over. That just makes the laning phase against Teemo almost impossible to deal with, especially for the top lane champions that tend to be usually melee champions. So not only is Teemo going to be more squishy as the game progresses because now his HP growth has been lowered, but he'll also be less oppressive and obnoxious in the laning phase because his E ability, which is the main culprit, has also been nerfed. Next up, let's go over some changes to items, the first of which is going to be Black Cleaver. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a scary change because whenever Black Cleaver is considered to be very strong, you pretty much build it on about half of the champions in League of Legends. The change is as follows. Now, instead of stacking up to 24%, 6 times 4% each, it'll actually stack 5% each, stack up to 30%. So an extra 6% at maximum stacks, which is pretty good. This is definitely going to be putting Black Cleaver a lot more in line for so many more champions, and I feel like it's going to be an item that a lot more people are going to buy, and whenever the meta is focused around Black Cleaver, people don't usually have a good time, so I'm a little bit skeptical about this one. But the reason for this, I'm assuming, is because tanks tend to be just taking over at the very moment, so getting Black Cleaver to try and face them is good, but most of those tanks and bruisers build Black Cleaver as well, so I'm a little confused. And following this, Giant Slayer and Lord Dominic's regards have also received some changes to where overall I would think it's a buff, especially if the tank you're trying to kill just has an obscene amount of extra HP than you, maybe let's say 2k, but if the HP difference is not too high, then of course it is going to be a nerf. I mean, usually you'd only buy this item if the sole purpose is as an AD carry or maybe like a mid lane assassin or something, you're trying to kill a very tanky tank. So if you're buying for the actual purpose of the item, it should be overall a buff. But if you have this item and you're attacking someone that just has barely extra HP than you, then it's probably going to be an overall nerf. And last but not least, there's some nerfs coming over to the rune set bonuses. This is when you combine 2 different pages together to give you extra stats, like usually AD or AP, which just depending on the champion you're playing. Funny enough, it's actually nerfing only sorcery combined with all the other paths, so if you go for sorcery and you get literally anything else, you're gonna be getting a little bit less AD or AP depending on the champion you're playing. Which kind of makes sense. I mean, sorcery is definitely the best path at the very moment for the majority of champions because the Meteor, Manifold Band, all those things are just so damn good. Scorch also being fantastic. But either way, guys, I mean, that's going to be it for this video. There you have it, some changes coming over to the PBE server very early on. Let me know what you think about these changes down in the comment section below, giving us an early idea as to what Riot is planning or cooking over on the PBE server for the patch to come. But either way, guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button to show your support, share with your friends, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you for the next video. Peace.